Hey, welcome to another edition of Bleeding Edge Interviews, where we get to know the masterminds behind progressive rock and metal just a little bit better. I'm your host, Super Dave, and I want to thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I really enjoy the process of discovery that comes with the progressive rock genre. It's one of the things I love most about the genre. Always something new. And these days, part of that experience of discovery includes a bevy of new artists coming out to make their mark, and I am loving it. Absolutely loving it. So among those new artists is the project ALMO, which is mostly a one-man show with a bit of help from his friends. So Almö Thorsell is the person behind this project whose vision created ALMO's debut album, Reconciliation, and it's a banger. It's getting some positive attention. And I was lucky enough to get to sit down and chat with Benjamin about the influences and the personal experiences that contributed to him creating this album, which has been getting, like I said, a lot of very positive attention. Some Album of the Year mentions from a couple reviewers I've heard. And it's another example of that third generation, as I call them, of prog making their mark. People who were influenced by those who were influenced by the classic generation. And he's just another one of them. So, without further ado, here is my conversation with Almö Thorsell of ALMO. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm really happy to be talking to you, and I appreciate your time and chatting with me about the new album and everything.
Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, certainly. So, the album's been out now a couple of months, Reconciliation, and I'm curious as to how you are experiencing the public and critical feedback so far.
Yeah, I've received a lot of positive reviews and comments everywhere, so that's really fun. Of course, there's been some negative ones as well, but you have to take the good with the bad. So,
yeah.
Overall, it seems very positive, at least, and I'm really happy about the reception.
Yeah, that's been the overall tone, I think, of the responses I've seen so far. Overall positive. What's it like when you put all your time and effort into a piece of work like this, and to have to experience also the negative responses? I hope they weren't too harsh when at least they were in how they expressed themselves.
Well, I kind of expected there to be some bad stuff as well. Not everyone is going to like everything, so...
Sure.
But yeah, of course, it doesn't feel very good when you read those for the first time, but just have to take it with a grain of salt and move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope overall they at least were constructive in how they went about it, but I also know critics can sometimes be pretty difficult, but
yeah.
From what I've seen, it's been very positive responses, and I'm happy for you to be, experiencing that success so far. That's part of what also brought you to my attention, because as much as my nose is to the ground, I kind of depend on other people to help keep me up to speed, because this is not a full-time job for me.
Yeah.
So with this album, what we're talking about is, you essentially did nearly everything in terms of instruments and vocals, and of course the creation of the album. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's a huge undertaking. What inspired you to jump into this endeavor to that degree?
Well, so I started writing this in 2018, I think. Like around summer 2018. And at first, it was just, I had gotten really deep into prog metal for a while. And I wanted to write music like that. And I started out writing a couple songs and some demos. And I thought, I should just go all the way and make an album. And back then I was in another band. We were called Frozen Realm. It was a melodic death metal band that we started in 2013, I think, or something like that. I wrote almost all the music there. And so I had the experience of writing and programming the drums and the symphonics for our demos. So I thought, yeah, I can probably do this. And I think the hard thing to really get into for me was the singing. Because when I started out, I had barely no experience singing. And there were some tracks in our former band where I did some backup clean vocals and some backup growling. And then by the end of the lifespan of the band, the other singer left, so I took over vocal duties there. So then I got to do some mostly growling on stage, and we didn't record anything to that. But then I thought that, yeah, I can probably do it all by myself, and it's do you want me to go into like the inspiration and everything now, or should we go to that later?
Oh, go for it. Run with it.
Okay, so it's the concept or story of the album is pretty personal and esoteric. So in the beginning of 2018, I had just gotten out of a really toxic relationship, and it took a great toll on me mentally. And that's kind of where the whole concept sprang from. So the album is about making peace with the past and moving beyond it, and learning from the past and improving as a person. So you don't have to forget everything that's happened, even if it was bad stuff. You can accept it and realize that it's there and it's a part of you, but it's also something that's helped shape you as the person you are, and helps you evolve going forward. So that's where I got the idea for it. And as I said, I had written like three songs that were like half-finished demos that were pretty bad at first. And from those three songs, I kind of got the idea for the whole album, and I slotted those three songs into song titles. It's the first three songs on the album, Rain, Wilson, and Hope.
Yes.
And those have gone through like 3 or 4 different versions of the songs. So it's all nothing like when I first wrote them.
Oh, wow.
But then I just all the song titles is what I started with after that. So I wrote down that, okay, I'm gonna have these songs and they're gonna be named this, and I thought each song is gonna be about this feeling or this concept, and it's all going to culminate in an epic long song at the end. So that's what I set out to do. And yeah, I've spent let's see, I think I was finished writing all the music by the end of 2022, I think. Yeah, something like that. Or 2022, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And then I spent it must have been even earlier. I was finished writing by the start of 2022 or the end of 2021. And then I spent like a whole year recording everything, a bit more. And then I finally sent it off for mixing last summer, now in August. So it's been a really long project, and it's such a weight off my shoulders to finally have it done and released.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work. And I got to say, I guess it's probably could be applicable to call this a passion project in a certain sense, because you've invested so much of yourself and your time and your effort into it.
Yeah.
That it strikes me that it's very different than the stuff you created with Frozen Realm. So I'm curious about how this experience of doing this and doing that and the transition in the musical styles, what was that like for you? How would you describe the differences?
So in my old band, we were like melodic death, Gothenburg metal, and our biggest influences were stuff like Older In Flames, At the Gates, Dissection, the Children of Bodom, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's where I come from originally in my music tastes, was melodic death and power metal. I'm also a really big fan of. Yeah. So that's what we did there. And during the time when we were in the band, I got really into prog metal. And the drummer in that band, Victor, he's the one who helped me a bit with the drums on Reconciliation. He really got me into prog. So I knew about Devin Townsend pretty much before, and maybe some other stuff. I had heard some Dream Theater songs and so on. And then he introduced me to Between the Bird and Me, Heiken, and a lot of other stuff. And it really clicked with me. And so we both felt that, okay, we're not that interested anymore in writing this music, the Melodef.
Yeah.
So we kind of lost interest in the band after a while, and we disbanded it if it was like 2018 or 19, I can't really remember. And we went our own ways. So, and I, by then I had already started writing on Reconciliation, and felt like I wanted to dedicate more time to that.
Yeah.
And so while we had the band, I was playing around a lot with prog stuff on the side. And so I have some old stuff that didn't make it on the record, but that I tried writing some prog metal. And I don't know, there's maybe one or two riffs somewhere that I can reuse someday. But so that's where I got my practice. And then once I set out to write this, as I said, I had like 3-4 versions of the first songs that I wrote, and just trying to get it to sound good and feel right.
Right.
And it's been a huge learning experience for me doing all this, and that's also why it's taken so long. I mean, I work a full-time job, so I don't have that much time to sit and write music, and I do other stuff as well. So I have to take the time as I have to work on the music.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you're not the first person I've spoken to who has basically taken on a project of this size alone to some degree. Andy Tillison of The Tangent I just spoke to fairly recently, like he did same thing you did, wrote it all, put it all together in the studio himself, or people who created a bunch of music and then maybe recruited a few musicians to help out with it, but in a certain sense it was still all on them. And it's such an impressive undertaking to think about all the stuff you did, especially with all the layers of instrumentation and arrangement that you have going on in this album. It's in many ways, I imagine, freeing when you are outside of the band concept to be able to take it whatever direction you want to take it and make it truly your voice that is represented in the outcome. At the same time, I know to a degree that it can be pretty overwhelming to have everything on your shoulders.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, there were times when I felt like this is just too much. I'm never going to finish this. I'll just have a couple half-finished demos for myself, and I'll just leave it at that, because sometimes it just felt like too much work. And then at first I was like, I'm going to try mixing this myself. And then after a while I realized, no, that's not going to work. It's going to take too much time. I'm not even going to be satisfied in the end. So, yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine there were moments in the course of that you were thinking, oh God, I wish I was in a band again and I didn't have to do this by myself.
Yeah. I mean, especially with the drums, I think I'm not a drummer. I've never been a drummer or even tried. Yeah. So all I know about the drum program is just like listening to stuff and trying to hear how it's done.
Yeah.
And so I programmed all the drums at first, and then Victor, as I mentioned earlier, he came over to my place and he brought his electronic drum kit. And there were a couple of parts where I was like, okay, I've just done like really, really basic drums here just to have something to play to. Can you come up with something that sounds a little cooler?
Yeah.
And we worked something out, and he recorded that. And then for other parts, we listened through it, and it was like, that feels unhuman. No, I can play that and stuff. Like, you should think like this when you do the fills and stuff like that. So that was a lot of help. Right. And then Lulu, who mixed the album, also did a lot of work on making the drums sound even better and realistic and so.
Right. I'm very impressed what people can do with drum programming these days. It's come a long way since I was a teenager, and the concept of it first. Yeah. and I'm, to some degree, it fascinates me that people can put together what they're doing with this, because it strikes me in some ways like, is it like, I picture it being very long, time consuming and tedious, but I don't know what degree. Okay. I don't know to what degree they've simplified it in all the years since, but I imagine that's one of those opportunities, though, you have in doing this alone, that you became more familiar with how to do that and how to compose drum parts and such.
Yeah.
I imagine there were a number of maybe opportunities you found in the course of doing this, or certainly challenges that you may have had to overcome, and something you've learned to approach it differently in the future. Where do you see yourself? Because I don't know what your future plans are, but if you choose to do it this way again, what did you learn to do or not to do next time around?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me is that when I've been writing, I've been like mixing it as I go. I'm trying to make every part sound good while I'm writing and recording it. Because the way I write is I just record parts. I don't write in like Guitar Pro or something like that. I just record something and I build it right in the DAW. So for me, I wasted so much time just fiddling around with knobs and trying to get stuff to sound good. Yeah. And now, after I've done this, and I've realized, okay, I'm not even going to attempt mixing it all by myself by the end of it. So why am I even wasting time on this? So I just, now when I'm writing, I just, I pick a preset sound and I just play and record, and I'll have to worry about stuff like that later, just so I can get some flow to it. Because otherwise I sit and spend hours just fiddling around, not accomplishing anything.
Right. Yeah. Get buried in the details if you're not.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as you mentioned before, there's so many layers of stuff everywhere. It's like there's guitars and there's a bunch of synths and there's a bunch of orchestration, and there's at times like 20, 30 vocal tracks at the same time. And I'm trying to not get too bogged down in those details while I'm writing now. So maybe just pick something that sounds kind of close to what I want, and then I can work out those details later on.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's funny how sometimes we have to learn to take it easier, make it simpler for ourselves. Because if you don't get careful, if you're not careful, you end up to the point that it stops being even enjoyable at all and becomes drudgery, because you get so weighted down in trying to make something just so. But, like for some people, that's the way they function. For other people, that's painful.
Yeah. I mean, I need it a little of both ways, because when I'm writing stuff and I feel like I need to get hyped by it myself. I need to be able to listen to it and say, damn, this sounds good. And I have to do some basic working around and trying to get to at least an acceptable level to me to be able to hear how it's actually kind of going to sound in the end.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest difference for you between writing music for melodic death metal versus writing more in a progressive genre?
Probably that I don't have to feel so constrained in prog. I mean, in melodic death, it's like there's a specific sound you're going for.
Yeah.
You want to sound like Old In Flames, pretty much, or Old At the Gates, or one of the old Finnish melodeath bands. Yeah. And there's like that's a style, and then sometimes you can throw in a little orchestration or stuff like that. But when I'm writing the prog stuff now, it's okay. I can have a medieval flute solo here. I can have a country part here, and no one really bats an eye, because you're kind of expecting twists and turns like that in prog. So that's really fun to me.
Yeah,
and I can blend a lot of genres. So
it's one of the things I've always loved about progressive music in that sense too, is that if you want, anything goes.
Yeah.
And like you said, nobody necessarily bats an eyelash at the idea that you suddenly threw in medieval flute. Matter of fact, they get probably more excited about it, because, I don't know if it was medieval flute, but I heard some flute in the music and I went, ooh. Like, wait a minute, is that him too? Does he play flute, or is that synth? I don't know, but I was like, wow.
It's a synth.
Okay, fair enough. I was like, wow, this guy's really broad. He does everything. But that's the fun part about it is, like with modern technology, you don't have to be a pianist. You can create what you want to create just with sound, with notes and music, and then put it into the instrument that you want it to be, even if you're not necessarily somebody that plays 7 instruments. Not everybody can be Prince.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now, talking about the concepts behind the album, as you said earlier, it struck me reading through the lyrics that, this is a very personal journey, a transitional journey, so to speak, from a point in life that felt trapped or constrained, I guess, to moving beyond that and finding a way to not just pretend it never happened, but basically to accept it as part of your overall life experience and move forward. So is that pretty much, I guess, the primary idea behind the album? Is that you working through to a point of acceptance in your own life then?
Yeah, I'd say so. So I think writing this album has been a great way for me to like process stuff and think through everything, and like forcing myself to think about it so I can get into the mindset that I need to be when I have to write the music.
Yeah.
So it forces me to think about it, and forces me to accept that, yeah, this happened, and there are stuff in life where that's not always going to be great, and you just have to accept it and move on. And I think it's really helped me writing this, even though it's been a very tough journey at times.
Yeah. How does it feel for you to put so much of yourself on display publicly like this? You know, like the idea that these lyrics were really about your own life, and hey, everybody, here's what's happening. Here's what I went through, and you've now basically thrown yourself out there, in some ways, potentially risking judgment, but also potentially finding connection, especially when, like, at various points in the album, the lyrics speak to the idea of hiding or wanting to be alone, while at the same time, ironically almost, you're putting yourself on public display as you're writing them.
Yeah, so it's been really scary. So, as you said, because it's so personal, it feels a lot more, feels a lot scarier to release the music and put it out there for everyone to see.
Yeah.
I mean, when we did our album with my old band, those were just like, it was like fantasy lyrics and stuff, more general stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's just, okay, these are some songs and it's got some lyrics, and they don't mean something personally to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, here it's it all means something personal to me, and I think that there's a lot of lines and stuff that don't make sense to anyone but me. And but I think and hope that people will make their own meanings about it. But yeah, it's been scary, and but hopefully, and this is how I feel when about artists that do the same, that put out stuff that's very deeply personal. It really resonates with you, I think, especially if there's something that you can relate to in it. It just feels more real.
Well, what I'd say is certainly the way the album is written, at least as I read through it, I like that it is written in, what's the word I'm looking for, I guess, vague enough terms. Like, I've heard some albums, you know, where there is maybe a personal story woven into a seemingly fictional story that I guess is allegory, and there's a message contained therein. But I guess it creates a certain distance when you're hearing it as characters and you're learning from them, versus lyrics you can hear and personalize because they're not specific enough to take you into another character or another story, but that you can hear reflections of your own life within them. And I think you achieved that quite well with this, because as you talk about now, the idea that this was you working through and processing a breakup from a difficult relationship, I was hearing different things in there in terms of relating to life in general. So I was able to apply it to myself, and I think that creates connection with the listener.
Yeah, and thank you first. And then that's kind of what I was going for. So I wanted it to, with the lyrics, I wanted them to be vague enough, but not too vague, so it's all just a bunch of metaphors and allegory and stuff. Because there's a lot of music like that, and I can enjoy that too.
Yeah.
But I felt for this, I wanted it to be like, it's specific enough, but still not super specific. Well, at times it is, but maybe those times only make sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to make it relatable to others as well.
Yeah, I think you did a good job with that. And I especially though, hearing your background with the lyrics, it certainly puts in my mind the song Winterhound in a very different light, because I think for me that more than the rest of the songs, at least, and I'll admit I've read through the lyrics once. I'm not the kid I was that I could sit in the bedroom and read through this stuff all the time.
Me neither.
But yeah, but I look at that and boy, that's to me that crux of the relationship being toxic, because in my mind I'm going, okay, well now I realize he basically was saying you treat me like a dog.
That's a nice read of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want me to spoil what the real story is?
Yeah, you know what? My curiosity says yes.
Yeah. So it's actually about the dog that we had.
Oh, no kidding.
That wasn't treated very well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of written from half my perspective and half the dog's perspective, as I saw it.
Well, it's a fascinating idea, but yeah, it certainly came across in that sense that, I can picture, that experience for someone being in a relationship where their partner doesn't seem to treat them very well emotionally or value them much. And so it came across pretty clearly there. That's fascinating. It had me actually looking up, I'm like, I wonder if Winterhound is a reference to a saying or something like that I'm not familiar with. And I'm looking up like, no, but I found out what the Danish word was for it in Vetterlund.
Yeah, so it's twisting off the Swedish word, vindhund.
There you go. I figured it probably were pretty close. I'm not sure why Google gave me the Danish version, but
but yeah, it's really interesting to hear that you got that read from it.
Yeah,
and I think that's proof that I at least managed to write something that's vague enough that you can do your own read of it and still have it resonate.
Yeah.
Even if to me it means something specific, it doesn't have to mean the same thing to you. So
yeah, I can recall people I've spoken to in the past, and I'll give credit where credit due, Jason Beeler, talking about the idea that he doesn't like to get too much into what his lyrics are about, and his imagery that he uses can be so fascinating. But he says, but in the end, if somebody asks me what it's about and they think in their head it was about XYZ and it's all this stuff they concocted, and then I say, no, it was really just about the toaster.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah. That's why I asked if you wanted me to tell you. So, I also subscribe a bit to that. So
yeah. I think that's actually, even knowing your end of it and having my own interpretation of it, it to me, it adds layers to the overall experience, because now it's not just you reflecting personal feelings, but you reflecting on your observation of someone else's experience.
Yeah.
So it's an empathic response. There we go. I only speak for a living. So yeah, that's very cool. So I think I know at one point I was playing Ask about the personal nature of this, and you've gotten into that already. You essentially anticipated my questions. I appreciate that. Make my job easy.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as where you see yourself in your journey to acceptance. Is this largely a journey you're recounting that you feel you have completed, or is it one to which you aspire still?
I think you're always going to have stuff to work on, and I think it's more like it's always going to be a work in progress, and I can get a long way, and I think I have come a long way, but of course there's times when stuff hits you and you realize that maybe there's still stuff that affects me in some ways. But largely I'd say I've moved past and reconciled with it. But I think, as I said, making this album has really helped me, and finally releasing it is like, it was the goalpost I've been chasing for so long, and now I've reached it, and it's just this huge weight off my shoulders, and I don't have to think about this stuff so much anymore.
Yeah.
Because while I was writing and recording it, I of course had to think about this stuff all the time.
Right. Yeah. That's a lot of processing. That's a lot of professional work, but in a sense, sounds like also a lot of personal work you did over the course of those years. So probably wise to say maybe you've reached an end, at least in that particular episode of your life.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I've closed one chapter now, so
yeah, working on reconciling the next chapters, right?
Exactly.
Speaking of next, I guess that leads me to what your thoughts are on what comes in the future for Almö. And I'm curious because, noting that that's your middle name, but also, I guess I got to think there's some symbolism in using that name for the band name or the project name, whatever you want to call it. And I'm curious what that is. I have an idea, but I'm going to let you tell me, see if I'm right.
Okay, so it's not very deep, actually. I was thinking about when I was thinking about what name to choose for this project. I went through a lot of ideas, and it was from like taking two words together and or making up word. And then I thought, I should probably just use my name, so this is just me. But then I realized my name is pretty long, so it's not going to be that easy to say or write for people.
Yeah.
And I thought Almö was short and catchy, and I removed the metal umlauts so people wouldn't associate me with Motorhead.
Fair enough.
And also Thorsell, my second last name, I thought it might give off a more like Viking vibe. So it's a name that pretty much means a descendant of Thor. So, so I thought, okay, if I choose this name, they're going to assume that it's like Viking metal or something like that.
Right. That's funny. Descended from Thor. Did you ever submit your DNA for testing?
No.
Be curious if it came back as Asgardian. I expect you to absolutely promote that on social media.
Yeah.
So, and again, see, there's the thing where as a listener building things in on my own, I'm going, Almö. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to Google that and see if that has any particular deep meaning, All I did find, though, and honestly, I thought in many ways that's where I thought maybe that was the choice, because what I see the definition is essentially the name, it means life-giving or nourishing. And I thought, wow, because as an album talking about working through life and that connection, like, well, that's pretty cool extra meaning. And then it kind of lends itself, I think, to what I experience as the overall positive vibe of the album itself.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. But, as I said, very fitting, actually. So.
Yeah, it lined up perfectly. I thought, I bet that's why he did that. And once again, I set myself up for, did you do it because of this? And people go, no. One of my favorite answers is, where does the name come from? What's that deep meaning there? No, we were just really high.
I think a lot of them more like that. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, prognoggin, you attribute meaning to everything, every picture on the album, every line or note. You think there's something going on there, and sometimes people are sometimes, Dave, they're just existing. And but anyway, so I actually derailed myself slightly there when I focused on the names. So the idea of what comes next, there's, after having done this, are you encouraged to do the process again? Are there ideas already percolating for a next album? Is there an impulse in your mind going, holy crap, I'm not doing this all by myself again. I need to get myself a band.
Yeah, so I've written a bit of stuff already. I don't know how much I should say just yet because everything's still so early that it's all subject to change.
Sure.
But I'm probably going to do another album. That's the plan right now, at least. And I plan to do it all by myself again.
Okay.
For this one, I don't think I'm going to do as deeply personal as I did this time. Because I think I need something a little more relaxing. What to say? Well, I don't think the music is going to be relaxing, but yeah, something that doesn't take such an emotional toll on me.
Sure. No, I get that.
And who knows, maybe I'll have to work through something again later in life and do another one.
Oh, we all will. I hate to tell you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm still going to be doing prog metal.
Nice.
And I have a work in progress concept for it, and the song names lying down and the outline of the album and stuff, and I started writing some stuff. So, but don't expect anything this year or next year. I'm very slow.
Yeah,
as
fair enough. Yeah, you are doing this alone, so that's fine. And I've the last couple of years encountered many albums that I think benefited from a long gestation period, whether it was imposed from outside sources or just the way they worked. The time and effort went into it showed in the end product, and they really came up with some fine stuff. So on behalf of those, I presume, watching and or listening to this, at the prospect of another ALMO album, great, excellent, yay, we are excited for that. I imagine, given the configuration of the project, touring is probably very, very difficult at best, or maybe not happening at all.
Yeah, as it is now, it's not happening at all.
Right.
So it would be really fun to tour someday.
Right.
But yeah, I'd have to bring together a band and find people who can play the stuff.
Yeah.
And want to play with me. So, and yeah, depending on how we set it up, I might have to pay them, so it's going to be expensive and stuff. So right now it's not in the plans, but who knows? Maybe sometime.
Touring is an expensive endeavor these days, and oftentimes especially profitable, has been my understanding as well. So
yeah, I heard.
I get that. I hear you. And but that doesn't mean that we can't get more music from you down the road, which is the upside. And there are plenty of bands that had success in their history, even going back to the dusky days of the 70s and 80s. When you're looking at Steely Dan or Alan Parsons' Project, they just put out albums. They didn't tour.
Yeah.
Like Steely Dan does a bit now, but they didn't at the time. They were never meant to be anything but studio projects. So it's a perfectly valid way to go about things.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff I write, I write it without any intention of playing it live. So I might have 4 different tracks of guitar at one spot, and that doesn't mean I would want to get 4 guitarists for a tour and stuff like that. So yeah, of course you can always have a bunch of backing tracks, but I don't write with the intention of playing it live. So
I imagine there's a certain liberation with that as well. Like you said, more guitarists on stage at once could get a little crowded, depending on the size of the stage or the size of the guitarist. But yeah, so excellent. Well, we look forward to new music, but right now we get to enjoy a really fine album with a reconciliation at this point in time. I'm glad you're experiencing the success and the accolades that you have been so far. It's great to see you. Great to know that you can see that all those years of effort were appreciated.
Yeah, it's been really fun to see that people have actually been finding it and listening to it.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, I was some unknown guy just putting out an album from nowhere, and I had no expectations of like anyone beyond my family and friends listening to it. So,
wow. So
well beyond the reception and reach I've got now, it just feels unreal. And I'm really happy and grateful to everyone who's been listening to it.
Oh, I'm happy for your success. I wish you continued success, and don't grind yourself too much this time with the next album, but I look forward to hearing that when that comes along, and I'll be there ready, willing and able to listen to that. And I wish you success with everything else, sir. Take care. I'm so happy you had the time to talk with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. It was really fun. I've never done anything like this before, so.
Oh, okay. There, you know what? So it's my second interview virgin in a row.
Oh.
So I'm happy for that. And that tells you there is room for new artists to come out and make a bit of a splash and get some attention pretty quickly. So I'm happy that all that's happening. That's one of the things that's nice about this modern world, where people have the ability to produce really high quality music by themselves.
Yeah.
Even if it takes them a long time, but they're able to do that. They're able to get the word out, and I'm happy to help spread the word in that sense as well. So again, thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, as Neil Peart wrote, a spirit with a vision is a dream with a mission, and Benjamin was absolutely driven by his vision on this album. As we mentioned, Reconciliation is out now, and I highly recommend you go give it a listen. I've also included a link in the description where you can purchase your own copies, so go ahead and do that too while you're at it. Benjamin, once again, it was my distinct pleasure speaking with you, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you continued success with the album, and I really look forward to what you create next. I'm sure it's going to be just as good at least. And my deepest gratitude for everyone listening and watching this. I just thank you all for joining me for this ride. Glad you could be here. If you haven't already, please take a moment, subscribe, throw me a like if you're on YouTube. Also, you can find my social media links below in the description if you want to catch up with me in the world of Twitter. And I'm still calling it Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, all that stuff. You also find the link there for my Live 365 channel, The Expanse, where you get to hear Almo along with all the other greats of classic and modern progressive rock and metal. Check it out when you get a chance, please. So that's all I have for you now. So I will remind you as always, never fear to deviate from the norm. Keep it proggy. And this is Super Dave, signing off.